we are starting our next chapter in VU Photoshop. We're going to be doing the pumpkin patch mutation of cats or animals. So you're going to start with quick select of the pumpkin, and you're going to select around it as best as you can. I prefer the quick select or the freeform marquee. So it doesn't have to be neat because you're going to work non-destructively, and then paste it back onto the turtle, their first animal that you're working with. And then you want to make it a clipping mask, so you're working non-destructively. And then you can clean it up a little bit more with your brush tool. Remember black kind of cleans it up, white brings it back if you go too far. So that's why you work non-destructively, so you can continue making it how it should be. So now you're going to scale it down, hit Command T to scale it. You're positioning it where you need a position, and then once you kind of think you have it decided, you can go to your Edit, Transform, and Warp tools. If you lower the opacity, you can see how you should warp it a little bit more. So kind of warp it to make it fit the shell as best as you can. The warp tool isn't quite perfect, but once you have it, you can hit Enter, and it will stay that way. Turn the opacity back, or keep it down just a little bit, and then you can zoom in and start cleaning up the edges a little bit more from the warping, because you don't want it to go over its head or outside its shell. You want it to take on the shell and shell shape, so it still looks like a turtle shell, but a pumpkin at the same time. So keep cleaning it up. And then with your layer blend modes, you're going to make it a blend mode of dodge burn, but you can kind of play with those and fill in a little bit more spaces, whatever you think makes the shell still look like a shell but a pumpkin at the same time. Then you're going to use appearance layers to change the turtle. I started with color balance, and then if you hit Option Delete Fill, once you get the color you want, it will take it away, so make sure it fills with the black. And then you can paint with the white tool brush back where you want the colors. So it's a little trick of getting what you want and then filling it in the spaces you need it. I also right-clicked and made it a clipping mask, so it only directly affect the turtle. So now we're going to go to the next animal, do the same thing. I'm using the kitty here, bringing the pumpkin back over, making it kind of fit where it should fit. And then make sure it's a clipping mask, and then I'm duplicating the stem to the head. And then once again, just lowering the opacity so you can see behind it, hitting Command T and warping that to fit the kitten's body. Putting again a appearance layer on it, or a layer mode on it, so you can see the fur through the pumpkin. And then I'm going to cut out the arms a little bit, erase it, the feet, so that you can see the feet through it. Clean up the stem on the head so it looks a little more natural sitting on the head. Again, working non-destructively, so you make sure you're working on that clipping mask layer. And now we're going to add appearance layer to the cat to change the color of the cat to make him look more orange. Make sure you're right clicking on it to make sure it's a clipping path directly to that layer. Add the color balance appearance layer, hit Option Delete again to fill it with black, and then bring back your white and paint in the color where you want it. Trying to avoid the eyes because I think the eyes would stay the blue, and then you're just painting it in where it should be orange. If it looks too orange like this, we're going to adjust it here in a minute. You can take down the opacity or fill a little bit more or change it. You can, good thing that's non-destructive, so you can go in and change the color that you're trying to make it, and then you can kind of paint it and brighten it. And then I add more of a contrast and balance to it that way, just to make them. So you can kind of play it with whatever animal and cat you choose to make them look like a pumpkin. And then I'm distorting the stem on top of the head to kind of play with the angle to look more like it's sitting on the head. And then blending it, taking the opacity down on my brush tool to blend it into the fur a little bit more. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut the image. I'm using my magnetic marquee tool and quickly going around the cat. Then I'm going to make it a clipping mask. If you double click on the clipping mask, you can play with the properties, you can smooth it, you can feather it, and if you get your edge defying tool within the properties, you can kind of clean up the edges to get the fur to come through a little bit more, which is what I'm doing now. As you can see, it cleans it up just a little bit more. You hit Command D to deselect. You're going to Shift select and drag it to your scene with the pumpkin and the turtle. So you're picking your background, adding the turtle and the kitty. And then in the background, you're selecting what you want gone. You just kind of quickly select it, and then you go to Edit, Content Aware, Fill. As you can see, it automatically fills what's all around it. And if you like what it sees in this window right here, you can hit OK. And then it will do its magic and it's gone. Now I'm going to add an appearance layer to the background of this image to bump up the contrast a little bit. Make sure it's above the content fill aware line that it put on a separate layer for you. And then you can kind of bump it up to match the orange pumpkin, so play with that coloring. And now we need to kind of get rid of the turtle's background. So I'm again working non-destructively and erasing what I don't want from the turtle. He is kind of already in grass, so it doesn't have to be perfect because he would have grass around him anyways. And then move him where you want and clean up any more edges if you forgot it. You're going to transform him to fit right in there. Kind of distort him with your transform tools to make him look correct. And then I think I'm going to put the cat right there. Make sure you label all your layers and group everything together that needs to be grouped. I am just going to clean him up a little bit more to make him look a little bit better, but remember, continue working non-destructively. Again, make sure everything's grouped together. And now I am using the dodge tool to kind of burn some color into him that's in your side panel, just to kind of darken some of those flyaways. And now I'm adding a shadow. I'm just using a dark gray and just lightly painting with my opacity down on a separate layer underneath each of the birds or animals. As you see right now, I've already added my bird, and I'm going to be adding text now. Make sure it's on the top layer. You just pretty much type like any other program. Pick your font. double click on the layer to add effects, and I'm adding a bevel, a stroke, and a drop shadow, which is all on the left side panel when you double click on that layer. So play with those settings to how you would like it to look. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine. I'm going to make a background layer, a clipping mask, and then I'm going to add a gradient to it that's black and white. So when you add a black and white gradient to a clipping path, it does fade like this, like it erases in a gradient style. And then I'm going to add an orange background. And the last thing I'm going to do is add this Now you're going to add the stone, and we're going to make the stone the source of what happens to why they're turning into pumpkins. So you're going to grab the stone and drag it over to the image, and then you're going to add a appearance layer of gradient mapping. You do gradient mapping, and then the gradient mapping is a cool feature. Make sure you make it a clipping mask. And the gradient mapping, you will adjust all the dark and light layers based on the gradient. So the dark side will be your dark tones, and your white side will be your light tones. So you start adding different tones in there, and then you can add stuff in the middle to give it more depth. Gradient mapping is a great appearance layer to use. It will allow you to do a lot of color changing, another source to change colors. Once you have it how you like it, you're going to duplicate it to kind of start a glow effect. So you duplicate it, and then you're going to blur it. So if you go to Effect, Blur, and you can scroll over to see it and zoom in, you can play with how the blur looks. Make sure it's behind the stone, and as you can see, it puts off a nice glow, the same color. You can make it a little bit bigger, and then you're going to duplicate it again to be above it, and then you can put an appearance layer on it so you can see the stone through it. I think I did linear burn, and as you can see, it looks like it's kind of in the ground, like they maybe have eaten it. So that's what you're going to do to finish this project. In my picture, you only see 3 animals, so you need to be able to add the 4th animal, and also on top of the image you will need to put an overlay of the snowing or sparkle effect, and it's simply just the image over top with a layer mode on it, so you can see what's through it, and put a nice effect on it to finish out this scene. And once you are done, save it with your first and last name, pumpkin patch or mutant pumpkin patch, and turn in the PSD file, and as well as print a copy off.